Welcome back to Switched to Linux. Here we're going to do a brief introduction to a neat little Linux distro called Makulu Linux. I saw a video on this one, I forget where, not too long ago. And what I liked about it is some of the theming and customizability. As you may have already noticed, if you haven't, I'll give it away in just a second. You'll see here from the site, it looks like it's been about almost 2 years since the website itself was up to date. But if you actually go to their site, which is makululinux.com, it will redirect you to the SourceForge location where you can download it. And it does appear that it is still an active distro. If you come up here, you'll see that the last update was literally just about a week ago, and so I might even have I downloaded this over a week ago, so I probably even downloaded a slightly older version. This did rank pretty high on DistroWatch. I forgot to look exactly where it is right now, but it is pretty high. Let's just go ahead and have a look over there at DistroWatch. Just have a quick look, and then we'll do a little bit of a walkthrough on it. And let me just do a real quick look. Let's see if I spot it. If I don't spot it real quick, I'll just do a basic search. No, it looks like it's not on the top right now. It was actually on the top 100 list over here. Let me just, as a quick pause of control, let me just double check. Yeah. Okay, so it does not appear as though it's on my listing this week, but when I had downloaded it, it was on the top 100. This is an interesting distro, and what I liked about it the most is what you could do with the theming, because I made mine. It literally took me only about 10 minutes to do this. I made mine a complete Windows 10 clone. So I just think I'm just going to keep this guy around on a virtual box, and if I ever happen to get one of those scammy Microsoft technical support people calling me on the phone, I think I'm just going to boot up over here. I'm going to see how long it might take them to realize we're on Linux, not on Windows. But if you are familiar with Windows 10, you'll see that this is very well themed. The only thing I had to do outside of basic settings inside the system itself, I downloaded the wallpaper. And I downloaded the Windows icon for down here, and I had to make a quite slight little adjustment to it. So first, let me get the bad part out of the way that I've encountered. Overall, this is a Linux distro built on top of Linux Mint, and I see a lot of the stability and easy usability inside of the Linux Mint platform. For example, you see the 1812 Overture over here on my desktop. That was the file that I pulled out of here just to do a quick audio test. And it's so wonderful being in the Linux Mint world because, you know, audio files work out of the box without screwing with repositories and without screwing with codexes and things like that. Of course, it was an option. You do have the option to whether you want to install it or not. In which case I chose to install it. So installation was pretty quick. It actually took only about 10-15 minutes to install this onto a virtual box, and I spent about probably another 10 minutes running the system updates. So the only things that I noted so far that were a little problematic is just a little bit of an uglier interface on the install. It starts out with the basic Ubuntu installation. You know, where's it going, how's it setting up, and then once you get your time zone and your keyboard, instead of giving you a continued nice fluid installation window, it kind of reduced itself to a little ugly GUI box that simply said installing files. I'm definitely going to forgive that. Pretty much if you were installing this for somebody, they'd never see that again. I thought I saw that one other place. I can't remember where it was now. After I installed it, I still received the pop-up. There was a little pop-up that says, hey, you're on a live CD key, so your settings will not be saved. And I was kind of curious about that because it was like, I don't know if that's going to work well or not. But indeed, it was just a fluke in how it was installed. Once the first run of this program that it was not doing that any longer. And the only major bug that I found, the menu down here, let me show you what the menu here looks like. It's not exactly like Windows 10, but man, it's pretty close. I could not in short order figure out how to get these guys. I want to get these guys reduced just down to the icons. I couldn't get this menu controlled. This is your basic cinnamon menu over here, and then there's some other items. Now this is a custom menu that you can control and configure in the panels section, or applets. I'm sorry, applets section in the settings. But what I found is that usually on these applets, you can right-click an applet and configure it. If I right-click this and hit the configure, the entire system will freeze on me. That is the only bug that I have found in the time I've been looking around at this. None, I haven't used it repeatedly, but it just, I played around with it for a good hour or so, and that is really the only major bug. Now, a couple of little annoyances. It didn't come with GIMP installed. If there is a image editor, I didn't see it, and that was totally weird to me because of the vast array of other good programs that are on here, and we'll point those out a little bit later. One of the major annoyances, though, is that it comes installed with this variety wallpaper switcher turned on, and if you are already familiar with Linux Mint, there is a random desktop changer already built into the system. So if you go into your backgrounds and into settings, you can actually turn on background slideshow, and then you can delay it every 15 minutes or so. So I actually downloaded a few Windows 10 looking backgrounds. I thought that this might be a fun thing to do in the event, I take the computer out somewhere, so I might actually think I'm really on Windows 10. It'd take a little bit of time for them to realize you're not. But if I turn this guy off, we'll go back to our basic desktop, our basic wallpaper there. So for a lot of people, in the initial review that I watched of this not long ago, he was actually bothered by the wallpapers constantly switching. If I came on here and switched the wallpaper, it'd switch back in a very short order. It's kind of annoying, really. Well, what it is they turn on the variety wallpaper, which you can actually access down here in the task manager right by the clock, and I changed the clock just to match the theming that I like. But here you can see this is your previous and your next wallpaper. So the other things that this allowed me to do is have this clock up here at the top, and I did not bother reconfiguring the clock this way. But it does have the clock up here, which gives it yet another Windows 10-ish type feel, although in reality, this clock on Windows 10 is only there on the initial login screen. However, I still thought it was pretty cool, and I like a big clock on my desktop. It kind of helps me out to see the time and things. I can look up to any computer screen and see that. But what I did here is I came on and I basically removed the slider settings. And that's the cool thing about this variety plugin. There is another system also in these settings. On Linux Mint, I usually just right-click, change the desktop background, click the back arrow to get to settings. I just found that's the quickest way for me to do it if I'm on the mouse anyway. So in your startup applications, the only other thing that seemed odd to me is this guy right here. There is this Makulu system check, and it says, vital Makulu system checks do not remove or disable. I went ahead and turned that off because I don't know what it's doing. And the computer is not yet imploded, and it seems to be running just fine. I haven't had any crashes or anything, at least since I've turned that guy off. So I don't know what it's doing. If you're an extra paranoid person and you are concerned about that, you might want to run this in a VirtualBox behind a Wireshark to see what type of communication is going on. I don't imagine there's going to be a whole lot. But you never know, really. And like I said, the only other thing I did is I installed GIMP. So all the programs on this are exactly what was on here, with the sole exception of GIMP. Now first, I'm going to walk through how I got themed like Windows 10. And this is just such a cool part of the platform itself because it allowed you, by default, to just choose how you want the system to look. So as I said, I love to use this for one of those website scammers. And the thing that originally made me think about doing that, the very first time I saw this, I looked at that, I scratched my head and said, why is that program? Oh, that's fascinating. TeamViewer is pre-installed. That's kind of funny. It'll take a second to boot up here, and it's going to do that. Here you go. Look at that. TeamViewer is already pre-installed on this computer. And so you could literally just get this guy right up there into that TeamViewer mode, give them your code, and they're going to try and run a tree in a terminal. Just so that you guys know I'm actually doing this on Linux and not on, you know, anything else. You can see here's my terminal. Let's do that. Super secret password, and there you go. Now I'm in root. No, I apparently can't type today. All right, so anyway, you boot this guy up, you go right into themes, and the cool thing is they actually put Windows type themes right into here. So you click in on the themes. I'm running this in a VirtualBox. It's actually pretty smooth. So here under your Windows border, you can pick, you know, which Windows 10 version you want. I'm not even sure you can do some of these colors. Maybe you can. I don't know. Spend enough time trying to theme Windows 10. But you can go back to the Windows 7 look. You can go back to a Windows 8 look. You can go back to Windows Vista, Windows XP. And I'm like, man, that's pretty neat. I might actually want to build one of those. Your icons, same thing. You have your basic Linux icons, your Adwada, your GNOME. But you also have Windows XP, Windows 8, Windows 7, Windows 10, Windows Vista. Your controls. These, of course, don't appear anywhere on the Windows platform, but you can see them. At least I don't think they do. And then over here, we have the mouse cursors. And if you can actually get to the point where you can see my spinning wheel, you will see it as the same Windows 10 cursor. So here I can pick my Windows 10, my Windows XP, my Windows 7, my Windows 8, Classic. You know, so you can do all this, and then your desktop as well. You can kind of set up your desktop, which will control how the task manager looks. So you can see in this case, it gives us the blue bars underneath here, the same exact setup that it looks like, including a lot of the icons. Now, I have the network icon. I know this is the same icon. I think that volume one is. I'm not totally sure about that, but I know this icon for all Windows is certainly one of them. The show full desktop is not. I mean, obviously in Windows 10, that's just a little line over here, but I like having that down at the bottom. And so it's very handy to have all that theme setting. So you can do that. You can, of course, change the fonts. This is, of course, built on Linux Mint, so all the things that you can do inside Linux Mint you can do. For your menu here, it did come by default with the Makulu logo. And what I did is just come down here, configure the configurable menu, and then right over here is where the icon is. And what I did is I just downloaded some wallpapers and some icons. Come over here into the home folder. I just dropped them under resources here. So I had 3 different Windows wallpapers to play with. And then this guy here is the one. Let me see if I open that up if you can see it well. So this is the one that I had, and I found that it was too big. It would give itself away to not be Windows 10 because it was slightly too big. So I installed GIMP Shop and just gave it a little bit of padding to cram it down because it's gonna, you know, adjust the size based upon the borders and such. And so I did that, so it kind of matches and just looks beautifully like Windows 10. It's totally awesome. I should use this sometime out and about and see if people think I'm actually on Windows 10. A couple of the other fascinating things they did in the operating system. For your browser, they don't assume that you either like Chromium or like Firefox. When you first get this on online and in the task manager, or not in the task manager, in like the pinned to the taskbar there, instead of having Firefox or Chrome, we actually have this browser icon. And what this guy does is it loads up and it asks which one is your preferred browser. Now, I don't know if this actually sets. In fact, let me actually log in there and check that out real quick. I don't think it sets your default because there were a few places where something that I triggered did actually go over and open up a browser, and it always opened Chromium despite the fact I hit Firefox on this. So I'm not sure if it actually sets your browser default. Let me check that real quick. Gotta remember where that is. There should be a default programs in here somewhere. If I can remember where that is. Preferred applications, I believe it's called. Okay. So that did not actually go in and change the default application. I was hoping that would, because you can see Chromium is still set as my default. I'm going to change that to Firefox because that is my preferred. So it doesn't actually change it, but what you did is you clicked on this guy here and then you picked whichever one you want, and that did not actually set it in the preferred application. So I'm not sure if it's supposed to do that, or maybe I only did that on the live key and not the real case. I'm not sure. Maybe if I click Chromium there, maybe what it does is it will close that down and opens up the browser there, but I'm not sure if I'm not sure if it will actually set that in the preferred applications. So it's not. You can see Chromium here is not currently set as the cancel the keyring there. You can see Chromium is not currently set. So if that's supposed to set the preferred application, it actually doesn't seem to do that. That's not a huge distraction for me, except the fact that the default was Chromium there, and I generally prefer Firefox. I believe Linux Mint has Firefox. I try and move the world away from Chrome and Chromium, just mostly out of principle. No real reason outside of that. But you have that not only with the Software Center, but with or not only with the browsers, but with the Software Center. So this guy here, this fiery looking bag, is your Software Center application, and rather than just giving you a Software Center, it actually gives you the choice. Do you want to go with the full-blown Linux Mint Software Center? And it tells you what it is. The default Software Center is easy to use with nice icons, detailed software descriptions, and reviews. AppGrid is a little bit faster system, and then of course you can go with the Synaptic Package Manager if you're a more advanced user. So the AppGrid here you'll actually see is essentially the same type of system you'd see in XFCE, which to my reading and understanding I believe was the older platform that Makulu ran on. I'm not sure when exactly they went to the Cinnamon, but I think they probably did it because it allowed them to run the clones. And I think that these clone systems, some people love them, some people hate them. You know, I think in this case, getting it this much of a clone is just like, why bother? But the fact that you can do this on a Linux system, I think this would be a very fun thing to do to mess with some fraudulent text scammer. This would be a fun application. And really, if you want a system that somebody really has that feel of being Windows, if they're really not comfortable making that step away from the Windows system into Linux, a system like this, you can show them that, hey, you know, all the front end stuff that we see, we can do all that front end stuff. It's kind of what I'm doing here. You know, this front end, this would probably even trick somebody who's on Windows a lot. They might get in here and have to go a few clicks before they realize what's going on. Is this really what? Huh? You know, but it's a really cool system. So next, let's look at some of the default applications and some of the other things that they've done. Obviously, we get this menu here that is kind of made to sort of look like the Windows 10. I wish I'd get rid of this guy here. Maybe it's just a button I toggled somewhere around the line, but I wish I could get rid of this line here. Although I think it might be everything exactly here. No, it's not. I don't know. Let me see if I click remove. Maybe what I can do is I can just remove them all from here. That might be a fun thing to do. I wonder what happens if there is no more accessible panel. So this is called the accessible panel in there. So I guess if I remove those or make adjustments. But anyway, back onto away from the shiny stuff, back to what I wanted to show you. One of the cool things they have is they are supporting SSBs, basically browser support windows. At least that's what I think these are. I'm reasonably sure. So they have one here for Facebook, Word, and Excel. If you click on these, it'll open up a box here. Maybe this is a real program. I don't know. Cancel the default keyring. The fact that it's pulling up that default keyring tells me that this is an SSB based on the Chromium browser. That's my thought. But basically, if you happen to have Office 365, you can actually sign in right here and get to work with Office online. So they've done that for Word and Excel. They've done the same thing for Facebook. This is one of the only distros I've ever seen that has Skype pre-installed. It's ready to go. Click on this. You just need to enter your login credentials and you're ready to go. They have Steam already set up. I didn't click on this because I don't have a Steam account. They also have both Wine and Play on Linux. And I'm not sure if they have Wine separately or if it's just Play on Linux installed and it's just under the Wine. I'm not completely sure about that. I didn't look at it in more detail, but that is intriguing to me because it kind of tells me I don't have to mess with extra installation steps. If I'm looking for a distro to help somebody really move onto a Linux platform, this might be a very good system because, as I said, it's based on the stability of Linux Mint, which I mean, like it or hate it, it just works. And if we're really pushing people towards Linux as basic users, we do not need to be messing with codexes and doing weird terminal stuff. We need something that works out of the box. And this system right now, I feel like I could get in here right now, get work done, and never have to touch the terminal to get this set up, which is unlike some of the other systems I've done. You know, when I set up my KDE, it took me a good week to get that thing working right. The Enlightenment desktop, I never got that thing working right. They're both cool, and I still run KDE. I think KDE is a totally awesome multi-purpose system. But for solid work, I'd use this. Probably the only reason I'm not is, well, A, they have installed way more programs than I want. But B, I already have Linux Mint running. Now, a couple of the other things, since this did seem to be based on XFCE in the past, there's little artifaces like they have WPS Writer and stuff on here, which is the more lightweight Office system. I would probably uninstall those and use LibreOffice if I were using this for more work, just because, you know, LibreOffice is what I use across the field and it works great and just fine for me. But, you know, it has, let's walk through the various programs here. It comes with an archive manager. Some of these I have no idea what they are. I have no idea what Bluehoo is. If you know what some of these are, let me know. ClamTK, I've encountered that one. I don't remember what it is, though. It has LeafPad as your basic default text editor. Come to think of it, I don't even know what Linux Mint uses. I have no clue. I just know it works. LeafPad, I've used LeafPad for some of my other systems. It works out just great. Here's that Variety desktop switcher. Okay, for games, we have a couple of the games pre-configured that you might be used to seeing on a Linux or on a Windows system. You have your Solitaire, there's a chess, a Mahjong. It also gives you a Sudoku and Steam. No Candy Crush. Bonus! Okay. For graphics, GIMP Image Editor is the only program that I installed on this. Everything else came pre-installed. So your ImageMagick, Nomax is the one I haven't used before, Pencil, and there's Variety Slideshow. And then here, this is interesting because they don't give you Thunderbird. They give you Evolution instead, which Evolution is actually my preferred email system, email client, I should say. In fact, I run that on all my Linux computers for my main emails, and I use Thunderbird for some specialty emails like some Hotmail accounts and some Google accounts I have to have for some work applications. But for the most part, I love Evolution. The only system I don't use Evolution on is my Linux Mint KDE, because I found that Kmail works just as good as Evolution, and I just wanted to stick with the already deeply integrated systems, and it works just fine. So other internet, it does give you Chromium and Firefox by default, which is very good. Megasync, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's an online cloud storage type system. And like I said, it does come with TeamViewer, which is fascinating to me. It's like, why TeamViewer? But as I said, if you're building something to screw with a scammer, TeamViewer is an awesome thing to have. That's what they always want you to start. Notice that the Office here, they give you the Office looking icon. Yeah. Pretty cool. Under your other, like I said, I think that these are all like SSBs or something similar there too. I'm not sure if they're real programs or not. I haven't dove in enough to know. Here we do have Brasario by default. That's one of the things that Joe Collins hated about Ubuntu 16.10 is that they removed Brasario by default. Well, You know, you can argue for it or against it, but the fact that it's in here by default is cool. And if you don't know, Brasardo is the default Linux CD writer. There is no Banshee on here, which usually comes on a Linux Mint, but we do have VLC and Rhythmbox by default. We have a few other items there as well. There's your volume controllers, sound recorders. Wine, I don't believe there's anything actually already installed. I'm going to boot up Play on Linux though. Well, that's going in the background. We'll finish looking at these. Under your preferences, these are just your basic system settings. Of note, another useful thing that this system has is it does have a firewall and antivirus installed by default. So they are ready to go out of the box. And then you do have your Makulu constructor, which actually allows you to take a system image of your entire build. So in this case here, I think this is running on like a 20 gigabyte virtual disk, and I want to say it's expandable, so it's probably pretty small, except for the fact that I did have an old Ubuntu 16 on here, but it's like, I have Ubuntu 16 over here, I may as well override that. All right, so let's see. Sure, let's go ahead and let it do its thing there. So it does look like nothing from the Windows type world is already pre-installed, or I'd probably see it in this list here. So we're going to close that out. Close that out. Sure. Hopefully not give it a kernel panic or something. So that kind of in a nutshell. Here's recent files, by the way. I did turn this on. You can turn that on, turn off recent files. So I'm going to go through here after I turn off the camera here, take all these guys out, see if that fixes this up. I'd love to just get rid of this bar. And actually, at one point in time, I did see just the icons over here. It's kind of like the normal menu. I'll work on that. Networking worked about as good as it always seems to do in a VirtualBox for me. So although I don't click on my networking icon and get full access to all my systems, that's A, probably a good thing. B, it might be an artifact of how I have the virtual machine set up here. And C, don't really care because that's kind of the result that I've seen on other systems. However, this being based on Nemo, I was very quickly able to access all of my my NAS drive anyway, just by opening up a window, clicking over here, and just entering my NAS USB here, or my NAS IP address over here, entering in my login credentials, and we were good. And notice this little file system with the windows. Yeah. So this is Makulu Linux. Very nice platform to play with. If you are, trying to hide that you're on Linux, or if you are trying to mess with some tech scammer, it'd be a definitely cool thing to do. Also, I think just based upon the theming here, I can really make a person who is a little hesitant moving over to Linux, I really think I could give them a very comfortable operating system with this. So would I recommend it? I'd give this guy a go if you're looking to play around, or if you want to play around with some Linux distros. I think this is great. It's got a lot of cool applications. I know for me, it takes care of installing Evolution, which I usually have to do. All of my multimedia seem to work right out of the box. It has Skype installed, which, as much as I'm not a huge Microsoft fan, I do have to use Skype for business a lot. It has everything I need out of the box. I'm not about to wipe my computer that's already set up beautifully for it, but overall, I just wanted to show you what you could really do with this, and I think it's a great system and a great distro. I think you should go check it out, and let me know if you have resolved any of those bugs that I talk about in this particular video. Anyway, so that is it. This has been Tom, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.